Hello, what's up? What's going on, good people? This is your boy Deshaun Ewing. I am coming to you for Thursday Conversations. This is our first of what I hope to be many Thursday conversations. I hope that you all are doing well and that you're tuning in and you're going to bring some more folks to tune in as well. I encourage you to watch Party It and have a conversation even after this conversation. I have a couple of guests with me today who are going to dialogue with us about some things that are happening in our community. And we want to make sure that when this dialogue is happening, that you realize this is coming from our truth, our space, our perspective. And these brothers are dynamic in the work that they do in our city and our community. So I'm going to bring on with me first off Dr. Joe Johnson. He is going to say hello to you.
What's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm all right, brother. What's happening with you, man?
Man, been having this same dialogue all day, but a necessary dialogue. So I appreciate you having us coming on here to speak about it.
I appreciate you, man, accepting the invitation. When it was dropped into my spirit to have this conversation for others to witness and to be a part of, you definitely were one of those names that popped right into my mind, along with this next brother that I'm going to pop on screen, my man, Jamaal Smith. What's happening with you, girl?
You got it. What's going on, boss?
Hey,
Joe, what's happening, man?
What's up, man? We go back. You don't know that, Deshaun. We go
back.
Y'all probably ball together, man. You know, that's probably
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I know the story. And Jamaal and I went to high school together, man. So,
all right.
Mom Marshall, man, Eagles for life, baby.
Yes, sir.
Oh, man.
And Joe, you Milwaukee native, right? You went to Bayview, is that right?
Yep, went to Bayview. Yep.
Nice. So,
that's right.
That's what's up. Yeah, so a lot of people know Jamaal from his balling days. That dude that had them skills and quick hands.
All right.
All right. That won you?
All right. All right.
You weren't that dude, but you was that dude.
I was average.
Jamarca ball. Don't let him play no games with you.
Oh yeah, I remember them days. So man, I'm so glad that y'all are on with me to engage our community in a dialogue around a lot of the things that people have been tiptoeing around, and they tiptoe around every so often until something like this hits, where the media attention is all front and center, and then we want to have these conversations. My goal is that this conversation will continue to ongoingly happen, so people will not forget and have those moments of lapse. And also today, I want to go to some things that were happening earlier in May that all of a sudden got pushed to the back of the burner because of what happened with George Floyd. But there's some other incidents that have occurred that I definitely want us to address. So what I'll do first, though, is allow you both to introduce yourselves to the masses as you see fit. Maybe a couple of minutes of just telling folks who you are, what you do, and why this work is your work. So whoever would like to go first, I'm going to slide off screen.
You got it, Doc.
Oh, well, I'm Dr. Joe Johnson, conference keynote speaker and peak performance coach. I do something very simple. I work with individuals and organizations, helping them to stay true to their identity, knowing who they are, staying true to their purpose, why they are here, and I help them transition how to get from where they are to where they want to be. Very simple. That's what I do.
All right. So, Jamaal Smith, Violence Prevention Manager for the City of Milwaukee Health Department Office of Violence Prevention. A lot of my work is centered around how do we support public policy that elevates authentic violence prevention. It's the also acknowledging the impact of violence as a public health issue, not just looking at it from an interpersonal or a communal aspect, but how do we look at violence from a systemic or structural or institutional lens, and saying there are many facets in which we need to change violence and ensuring that that is being met at all costs, in addition to engaging the community and being a part of that solution. One thing that we've done a lot of when it comes to violence prevention is that we've tried to craft solutions for the community without the community. So it's ensuring that we're trying to engage the community, especially those who have been a part of the conversation around violence, who have been in those communities that have been centered with violence or plagued with violence, for them to be a part of the solution as well.
All right, brothers, I thank y'all again because I know your work. Maybe some people in our communities don't, so I want to make sure they do know your work and what you're doing. So throughout the broadcast, you'll see me put their Instagram information up, so you can reach out to them, contact them if you want them to speak for you or to speak to groups that you are working with. They all are working virtually as we are in the times that we are in, but they are definitely able to come and have these conversations with you on a large basis, large scale, or even one-on-one. If you need to have a dialogue with a brother that's going to help you understand some things that you might not understand, these brothers will hold that conversation with you. It might not be a sweet conversation, so just be ready for the conversation if you're going to have that conversation. So with that, I want to just jump into what we who do this work, who work with race relations, work on trauma and deal with these issues, often get as our first argument or counter argument. What about that black on black crime though? What about that black on black crime? Why when a police officer kills someone, y'all are upset, y'all protesting, y'all mad about it, but y'all ain't doing nothing about this black on black crime? Who wants to be the first to address that? Because we've all heard it. That is the go-to staple counter argument. Jamaal, I see you having that look on your face. I'm trying to get stuff. I can have you
hey Joe, I see your bottom lip is bouncing too, Dr. Joe. I know you want to say so, yeah, I could definitely take this one first, man. Listen,
go hit it. Hit it, Jamaal. Hit
it. This black on black crime is nothing but a true diversion from the conversation around race relations when it comes to police community relations. And let me be clear, when we talk about black on black crime, it's crime, so there's no real elevation of white on white crime, Asian on Asian crime. We don't hear anything about anybody else's crime. It's always black on black crime because there's a diversion to really take away from the impact of racial oppression that is still happening within our communities. Here's 5 things I want people really to understand when it comes to black on black crime. One, you have to understand proximity, right? If we're definitely near each other, especially if we're in areas that are being deprived of the resources necessary for that place to thrive, and there's that proximity there. Because the second one of the 5 is segregation, right? When we look at Milwaukee being one of the most segregated cities in the country, the most segregated city in the country, right? So you have people who are factioned off in different areas across the city. When you think of the North Side, Central City, you think of Black folks. When you think of the South Side, you automatically go Latino. You think of further Northwest, you start to really see more of a Hmong population. And when you head towards the East Side, you start to see more of a white, more affluent, depending on what part of the East Side. But there's different factions that exist, and segregation is responsible for that. There is a reason why Milwaukee is recognized as the Selma of the North, right? Because of the impact of segregation and race relations that have happened here on a regular basis. People talk about the racism that has happened in the South, with Jim Crow and the Reconstruction and the Reformation period being the time in which the slave masters were giving reparations so they can be given their land back, which is a whole nother conversation in itself. But people don't really talk about the racism that happened in the North, which is why you saw such a large migration of people who went back down south, or they migrated west, because the racism was just as pertinent and powerful here as it was in the South. So the third part of that is spatial inequality, the third of the 5. So when you place a group of people in a certain area and you deny them the resources necessary for that area to thrive, that is spatial inequity. Milwaukee is also one of the leading cities in spatial inequity as well as many other Black cities, predominantly Black cities in this country. The fourth part of that, and Deshaun made mention to that, and I know Dr. Joe is going to get on that, is the impact of trauma, whether we're talking about generationally or within its current context. So when you think about the compounding of trauma, starting with generationally, how that passes, the concept of epigenetics, right? And how generational trauma passes through DNA. Your DNA strand doesn't change, but the gene activity can change through epigenetics and how that trauma impacts the DNA strand. But then you compound the trauma that people are experiencing now with that generational trauma, right? That what does that do to people's mental psyche and how that impacts them within the communities that are marginalized and franchised? And the last part of that is poverty, right? How much people are impacted by not being able to thrive economically. Okay, so when we're talking about the ways in which people are really struggling, whether that's unemployment or underemployment, which people have this whole perception that Black people don't want to work. No, Black people are not being compensated for the work that they're doing, which is why they're working 2, 3, 4 jobs at a time, which is underemployment. So if people really want to discuss Black on Black crime, you have to discuss all 5 of those factors. And then stop saying Black on Black crime, just say it's crime, right? There's no crime that's relegated to just Black folks. It's just crime happening, period.
Absolutely.
And we've got 2 brothers right here that's doing work to address that, as well as others across across the country that's doing the work that's not being broadcast as much. But there's fighters against that are people who are fighting to end violence every day, and we have to dispel the notion that no one cares about the violence that happens in our communities.
I appreciate those words, brother, and there's no more truth than that. So, Dr. Johnson, go ahead and expound on it a little bit from your perspective of that whole argument of Black on Black crime.
Well, the great thing is Jamal broke it down. I mean, he broke it down, and I don't. For me, I hate that's almost when somebody says I don't see color. That's what it reminds me of, and I hate when people say that, right? And so the first thing that I think about when people bring that argument of Black on Black crime, that tells me they don't have a historical, holistic conceptualization of what's really going on in the world. Right. That tells me right there. And so that's the first thing that comes to mind. But the other thing is, when you talk about trauma, a lot of times we talk about PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome. And when it comes to that, oftentimes something has happened in the past that's still impacting you today. Right. But I would argue that many of us, we don't have PTSD. We have CTSD, which is continuous traumatic stress syndrome. Right. And what that is very simple. Even if it didn't happen to me, but it happens and continues to happen to somebody that looks like me, it impacts me. Therefore, I have this experience of anxiety or this experience of fear or whatever emotion or whatever comes up from these actions and the things that's going on to people that look like me. And we have to understand that even if it didn't happen in the past, but it keeps happening over and over and over again like it is, we have a case of CTSD, continuous traumatic stress syndrome. And so those are the 2 things that come to mind to me when I think of Black on Black crime. And they have to understand, just like you said, Brother Jamal, proximity, right? If it's a bunch of us, if it's nothing but Black folks that live in a 20-mile radius, of course stuff is going to happen within that 20-mile radius. The same way as in the suburbs, you get issues within the suburbs where if it's a 10-mile radius of only white folks. So we have to understand proximity. And, at the end of the day, when people don't have a fully holistic picture of how there's so many intersections of race and power and money and all of this is interconnected. And when you don't understand it fully and you're only looking at it from one area or one piece of your lens, you're not going to fully understand what's going on. And then they will throw arguments like Black on Black crime.
The other aspect of that, if I can just throw in, when we talk about gun violence is always elevated from an urban community standpoint. Most people don't know that the majority of gun-related deaths happen by way of suicide, and 70% of those happen in predominantly white communities. But we spend so much time talking about the homicides that happen within our communities as a way to justify the treatment of Black folks, of saying, well, they're already criminals, they're already caged, they're already animals, they're already out of control anyway. So we need to make sure that we are controlling them in the manner that we need to control them. We also, we talk about mass incarceration, and somebody brought that point up. When you look at different laws, whether that's, the war on drugs, which turned out to be the war on Black folk. We know that. When you look at the Omnibus Crime Bill of 1994, which was authored by the guy who's running against Donald Trump in the fall, We have to understand the impact of policies too, because they were just there was narratives that was created in order to justify the actions. During the 2016 presidential election, they asked Trump, what did he think was necessary for the Black community to truly thrive? And the first thing he said was law and order. We're not talking about more economic infrastructure being built. We're not talking about better education being built. We're not talking about home ownership. We're not talking about better opportunities for employment. We're not talking about better opportunities for entrepreneurship. We need more damn cops. That's exactly what he said on television. And then you turn around and you look earlier this year, and the Department of Justice is now going to implement in 7 cities, including Milwaukee, a militarization of police and putting funding behind it. So when we look at the whole concept of how people are being viewed, people that look like me, I don't have to be pulled over. I don't have to be treated like Brother George Floyd to understand the frustration, because I know that could be me any moment, right? Brother Joe knows that could be him any moment. Deshaun, you know that could be you any moment. Even if we didn't experience it directly, we know that could be us any moment, because all they saw in that brother was a black face. So all they see in us, and all 3 of us, is black faces. And what do I have to do with black faces that I already feel that are animalistic, that are out of control, that need to be controlled? I got to put them down. I got to cage them, mass incarceration, or I got to put them down, murder.
Man, I think I told y'all, I warned y'all, this is not going to be a easily palatable conversation, and it's not meant to be. This is the truth, and the truth does not always feel good when it's applied. So we have to make sure that we are real about that. So with that, and on that note, let's talk a little bit. I was going to save it for later, but let's talk about it now with some of our younger generation, our children. My daughter just graduated today. I'm so happy. High school, 18.
Nice.
I have a friend who has an 18-year-old son, and she posted recently that because of what's going on, he's fearing for his life. He's afraid it could be him. That's that this continual trauma, right? The traumatic stress that you're talking about. What do you guys say? And Dr. Joe, I'll let you go first. To those who have children who are watching and have those concerns because they have grown up under the systemic oppression. They see it, they recognize it, they feel it in their bones. What do you say and want them to hear from you for just a moment?
Well, you know, it's very frustrating to always have to think about things. And I think, you know, so many people don't understand how the impact that it has on Black men or Black people or people of color who go through stuff like that. And, you know, prime example, my great grandfather dealt with the same thing. My grandfather dealt with the same thing. My father dealt with the same thing. Me, my sons dealing with the same thing, right? That's history. But this is what I'll say. People have to understand the way that it impacts us, and it doesn't impact us in a positive way. Prime example, I remember when my first son was born and he got a little older and he stood up and I was changing his clothes and I was about to put his shirt on. And I said, put your hands up so I could put your shirt on. And he did this. In that moment, I paused. And I paused because I realized that's the same thing that they hear from police officers. I shouldn't have to think about that as a Black man, right? Makes zero sense. But that is trauma. That is trauma. I'm consistently thinking about things that impacts me, and you don't even understand how a small situation for, well, you look like this guy who they said stole something. Do you understand how that impacts me? And now I'm thinking about my children. So I'm saying that to say young people have to be taught how. My son is coming in while I'm talking about this. Right? This is my youngest. But young people have to be taught that no matter what they do nowadays, you can control how other people view you, and you will be treated the way that they want to treat you. And we've been taught, for those who come from the church, treat others how you want to be treated. The reality is people treat you how they want to treat you. And we've been treated less than for so long. And my issue right now is a problem with people not understanding that this is a humanity issue, not just a Black issue. Because I'm so down for my people, but we are humans. We are humans. And I saw a meme earlier, and I'll shut my mouth, where somebody said, if somebody was kneeing this, had their knee on a dog, the society would be in outrage. And I said, man, isn't that true? That don't make no sense.
That's true.
Thinking about how powerful that is, though, right? The idea, if that was the case, if that officer had his knee on the dog's throat, how many people would have actually tried to save that dog?
You would have seen people from PETA, the animal rights groups. They would have been there immediately. But just let me be clear on that. And Joe, Doc, you hit it square on the head with all your statements, man. But one thing I also want to remember, and I want us to also to remember, is this is not just happening to Black men, right? We have to also look at the fact of how this happened to Breonna Taylor recently in Kentucky. We have to remember Tatiana Jefferson. We have to remember Sandra Bland, Ayanna Jones, the little 7-year-old who was killed by police because police thought that there was drug activity happening in her house, and they had the wrong house, similar to Breonna Taylor, right? But they came in the door with the intent to kill. Meanwhile, we've seen mass shooters who have just been arrested, and they've killed 50 plus people. You know what I mean? So, and usually mass shooters don't look like us. So when we look at the manner in which we're being identified, young people see these images too. They see how because of the color of their skin, how they're being portrayed, how they're being categorized, and they haven't even spoken one word yet, right? I've already drawn a conclusion based on the fact just that you're a Black youth. Just the same way that society looks at us as Black men, society looks at Black women. You know what I mean? The way that I've talked to, with my son, I've had a conversation with my son a few times. I've had to have the talk, right? And we're not talking about the sex talk. We're talking about the talk of how, you know what I mean? That's another conversation you have to have as well. But when we talk about the talk, is how do you interact as a Black boy with police? And the fact that I got to talk to my 12-year-old, he just turned 12, I have to talk to my 12-year-old about how to interact with police is absurd when you think about it. But then you have to remember Tamir Rice was 12 years old. So in that moment, when he turned 12 yesterday, I put this long post up, normally for his birthday, I'll just give him a big shout out. But yesterday I put this post up along with this picture when I got my master's degree, and he took it with me because that's the image I want my son to have of Black excellence, in spite of the fact that that society devalues Black bodies, right? So having that conversation with my son and telling him that this is the manner in which you have to be, you have to be concerned when being confronted or coming into contact with police. And what's ironic of that is police are trained to control, but I have to teach my son how to be controlled around people who are trained to control because they fear for their life. You see the irony in that? Like, that makes no sense to me. So that says to me, all you really care about, all you're focusing on, is this Black face. And young people see that just as much as we do. Contrary to popular opinion, young people pay attention just as much as we do.
Yeah.
So when they're viewing and seeing these things happening, now it's not just that they heard F the police, NWA, or whoever is saying that, they're seeing it. They're seeing some of that experiences. So we can talk all day long about how we really want the police community relations to happen and how we want, we're teaching our kids when it comes to respectability. But until the police culture decides to shift and change, we're going to continue seeing situations like George Floyd. We're going to continue seeing situations like Philando Castile. Philando Castile did everything right and still got murdered. And people got to understand the reason why they're rioting in Minnesota. I'm sure we'll get to the riots in a minute. The reason they're rioting is because George Floyd happened in Minneapolis. Philando Castile happened in St. Paul, Minnesota. That's right next to each other. They're pissed. That's why it happened. It's not just because of this one-off situation. That's a historical trend of things happening.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Man, so much power in the words of you two brothers just speaking on that. When you guys were speaking, it reminds me of something I've been dealing with just on a personal level. I've been so in my workspace, I was asked to talk about assertiveness, right? And what does that look like? And how do you address assertive? How do you have an assertive conversation or tone? And what struck a chord with me is that is a conversation that is very different for a Black or brown audience, especially when it comes to what y'all talked about as far as police contact and interaction. Do I have to belittle myself to be assertive enough for you not to take me as a threat? So now am I having to be passive? Does assertiveness go out the window? So what do you guys think about that, just for a touch point?
You know, I immediately I think about. I remember sitting. I think I was at the mall. I was at the mall years ago. Probably I don't know if I was in college or high school, and we were talking about, me and a few of my boys. We were talking about sports. And for most, at least in my experience, when we talk about sports, it can get animated and it can get, I don't want to say heated, but it can get our tone. We can assert ourselves on our point when we're talking about sports, right? And I remember it was two white older women sitting at a table a little bit away from us, and they started to grab their stuff and get ready to leave. And I said, "It's okay. Nothing is going on here. We're talking about sports, right?" And I'm saying that to say that the way in which people see us, no matter what we do, I believe Black men, when we step in the room, we're assertive already, just by the energy that we put out, right? And some of us put out even more energy than that because of our personalities. We assert ourselves in a way where we're not even trying. But the other part of that is, people take certain things that we do in a negative way, which is kind of like, man, what? I don't know where that came from. Maybe they had one bad experience with somebody that was Black. Now all Black people do this. But when it comes to asserting ourselves, I do think that unfortunately we have to be mindful of the perception of others, especially in interactions with law enforcement. And I just was saying it in the interview I was doing on Instagram Live. I said, you know, I almost feel like you have to have an alter ego in interactions with law enforcement, right? And I have this alter ego I call Cornball Kenny, right? And I have to turn into somebody totally outside of who I want to be in that moment to make sure that I get home.
Right.
Cornball Kenny.
Right. I laugh to keep from crying, man, because it's almost like code switching, bro. Like, you gotta switch just so I can live. Like, I have to switch my whole approach so I can live. But I mean, just what the question that you're asking as far as assertiveness, that's why Sandra Bland is no longer with us. Right. And she was well within her rights to say, I don't have to put my cigarette out. What are you stopping me for? What is all this happening? You know what I mean? Like, and I'm within my right to ask questions, right? Versus I've seen videos. I saw a video not too long ago, a few years back, where there was a cop who pulled over a white guy. This guy was flying. Like, he was like, I caught you doing 85 in a 45 mile an hour zone, right? You 40 miles over the speed limit. That's a ticket waiting to happen, right? This white dude got incensed. Like, you did not catch me at that speed. I slowed down. How dare you? Takes the ticket from the sheriff, rips it up, throws it at the sheriff. Dude, could you imagine what would have happened if I even reached my hand to try and take the damn ticket?
Oh, man.
You know what I mean? Like, we got to be concerned about that. They don't have to be, right? But then you also have the sheriff that pulled the woman over in Georgia and told her when she looked nervous, oh, don't worry about it. We only shoot Black people. Oh, okay. So now we got to be mindful of the fact that not only now you can't tell us that our feelings, that this is just a figment of our imagination. This fool just told you the only people they shoot is Black folk. And he ain't the only officer, whether that's a sheriff or if somebody from the police department, that feels like that. There's plenty of them that feel like that, right? So looking at being assertive, I mean, hell, There had to be a law that was created because black women wanted to wear their hair certain ways when they're in professional settings, right? You got to put a ban on discrimination against women wearing natural hair.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like you're trying to wipe out somebody's identity when I can just be assertive and confident in who I am, and you're trying to take that away from me so I can be subservient to you and this white supremacy culture. Well, you got to understand there are going to be some people, I myself included, who just are not going to go for that.
Yeah.
Just not going for that.
Yeah. And that's where we get into that. And someone had mentioned being tired of having to change up because of your color, tired of having to switch into that mold. And so that's that trauma piece as well, right? I'm constantly having to be in the mindset, I have to have 2-3 different personalities to survive a day.
Facts.
You know where I go and who I encounter. That's a little insane, right? That's a little crazy.
And it's not even just in how we address police. This is where you go to the bank.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? If you're trying to start a business and you want to apply for a loan, there's a way that you got to present yourself there and the tone that they want to hear. If you're going to an educational institution, if you're talking about your kids' education, there's a way that they want you, to approach them there, because then it will then trickle down to your children. Because if you come in a certain way and you come, real assertive and raw and authentic, then now they're going to be looking at your children. You're not in their presence and treating them a certain way because of the manner in which you approach them. So it's like, I can't be me. I got to be what you expect of me. People are tired of that.
Yeah.
People are tired of being what you expect. You know what I mean? And to what Dr. Joe said about treat people, the golden rule. You treat people how they want, how want to be.
Jamaal, we have you breaking up a little bit here.
So I have to be. Can you hear me now? Yeah, somebody just called.
Okay. Yep, you're good.
But how I want to be treated is different from how somebody else wants to be treated. So the rule should be, I'm gonna treat people as they want to be treated, because now that's showing me that I respect how you feel, which then allows for me to proceed in treating you based on how you feel.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Oh man, this is a lot. I don't know about you guys, but when we know I'll speak for myself. When I know I'm having these conversations, it takes a lot out of me to know I got to get into these conversations. I don't know if you guys have experienced that over the work that you do.
Not at all. Not at all.
Right. I mean, I remember I went to I think it was a 3-day anti-racism training. And when I tell you, after that last day, I probably slept longer than I slept in a man. Like, it's work. It's work thinking about it. It's work trying to figure out how to navigate. It's just work that you put out, man. And it's crazy.
Yeah, man. It is work. So with that, let's transition a little bit because we've had a couple of incidents. So we talked a little bit just briefly about George Floyd, and we'll get deeper into that conversation. But let's go to some other incidents. You have in Oklahoma, you had a Black delivery driver coming out of a gated community, and you have the good old association president that wants to know why he's there. And then
sounds pretty synonymous with Klan.
The association president. And then you just had Amy Cooper in New York, who decides to weaponize the police and make this phone call of a man who's asking her to do something that she's legally obligated to do.
Right.
Who wants to be the first to talk about the dangers of both of those experiences from the Black lens?
Let me say this.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Doc.
Let me say this, because I remember first hearing about the woman in New York, Amy Cooper, I believe is her name. And when I watched the video, there was an immediate thought of fear, because I know for a fact there's been other black males, other men that have experienced a phone call on them that had nothing to do with what was really going on. And either they got a criminal record because of that, or they were put in jail, right? And so the first thing that I was thinking about was how she doesn't realize that a phone call like that could end a man's life, not and even if it wasn't physically, mentally, right? Because if now you have a record and you have a criminal record, now it's impacting your ability to get jobs, to get housing, to get like if something like that, the police come and now they go after this man, they beat him up or whatever they do, she doesn't understand how that impacts us. Now we can't take care of our children the way that we want to take care of them. We have even more trauma. What she did is a crime in my eyes. It is a crime and it should be punished as a crime. An apology isn't acceptable because people have been doing that for too long. Emmett Till, that happened to him, right? Too many folks been doing that to us, and we've been losing too much of our lives off of false information. But because the individual who called was white, they believe them. So that is dangerous, very dangerous, and it's scary to know that that continues to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we may have lost Jamaal for a moment. We'll wait to get him back. But yeah, and that's what I don't think, and that for me is the epitome of racism, is when I can use what I know is my privilege, no matter or without concern of the cost to you.
Yeah.
Right. I don't care how it might make you look or what it might do to your well-being. I have the ability to do it, so I'm going to.
Yeah.
And that's what we ran into with that situation. What do you think about the Oklahoma situation where you're getting boxed in while doing your job and you have to explain yourself why you belong there?
You know, these are experiences that people need to see that shows you even when you're doing the right thing as a black man, you can get put in situations that will change your life forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to understand that we can't control everything all the time, because even when we do what we're supposed to do, other folks can come in and really just demolish everything that we stand for and turn our lives upside down. And so for our white brothers and sisters, they got to understand that they play a role in this game too. And like you just said, there's a cost. There's a cost. And part of that cost for me is, if something was to happen to that man when he blocked him off from the homeowners association, he was trying to figure out who he was. If something was to happen to that black man, I hope that he knows that the cost could be maybe his family is not going to the police and now they're coming after him. There's a cost to stuff like that. I don't wish that on anybody, but there's a cost when your silly, foolish actions, because someone is black, there's a cost that happens on you as a white person as well.
Jamaal, anything you want to speak on there?
Oh, of course. You know, the whole situation with Amy Cooper is just so frustrating. First off, the damsel in distress argument, I'm over that. It's almost as if, and that's a long-standing historical trend of, we have to protect, white women. I guess everybody desires white women, which that's not the case by any means, but that's just then contributed to a long practice of the minute that white women speak out about a sudden concern, there's this immediate response to it. And and her response when she was finally approached, what they were just words, or words really don't mean anything. Well, somebody go tell that to Emmett Till's family, right? Because Carolyn Bryant just decided to come out in 2007 and say that she was lying on Emmett Till, right? But we're talking about, he was killed in 1955. So here we are 52 years later, and you finally want to come out and say he really didn't whistle at me. But they weren't trying to hear that then. All they heard was he disrespected this white woman. We got to deal with that. that is a historical practice when it comes to, barbecue Becky, right? Or, now we've got, they call her Central Park Karen, or, the white girl who told on the black girl for falling asleep in the lobby of her own daggone apartment or her dorm, right? I got the key, you know what I mean? So this is a constant practice when it comes to, weaponizing the police through these phone calls. And then with the brother in Oklahoma, it's like, dude, you know what the imagery of that was. We already know that wouldn't have been a problem if that was a white dude who was doing the deliveries, right? But that's that image again, and we got to be honest in saying that many people really feel empowered based on this new presidential administration. You gotta be. We have to be willing to be honest and accept that, right? You cannot deny the fact that this administration has empowered people to be even more than what they already have. Now, I don't have to be as hidden with it, right? This doesn't have to be a covert or esoteric information. Now, I can just show you and be blatant and just come out and say what I really want to say, right? And so now I'm just showing you, black boy, you shouldn't be in our neighborhood. Black man, you shouldn't be talking to me, or I'm gonna call the police. Those are constant behaviors that have gone for generations. Now they've been given a greater platform because the leadership has allowed for this to happen.
Yes, indeed. And I think people, if you're honest with yourself, you cannot deny that. But what I really feel we're dealing with is a continuation of that that double or dual mentality that I can support the president but not support racism, or I can support what the administration does but not be racist. Does that really fly? Mm-hmm. Like, can you really support what someone is doing that has racist impact and not have that thread running through you? Is it possible? I just want to know from whoever wants to speak on that.
To me, that's common sense. I don't even got to answer that question.
Move on. Let's move on. Move on.
On to the next thing.
Man. The only thing I'll say to that, you know what? That's like somebody saying to you, "No disrespect," but
right,
you're about to be disrespectful. So what do you mean? I'm not racist, but I'm going to support a racist agenda? Okay. Next question.
Yeah. But I've had those conversations. I just want to know if I was the one not understanding or comprehending when I had those conversations. Like, no. So, and I'm going to say this. We're going to flip it just a little bit, but we have people who are considering themselves to be allies to the Black community, but they're doing things in that manner where they're voting for administrations that we know are detrimental to the Black community, and they're working in our Black schools to help our children.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say to those individuals who are educators, who are community people, but their votes aren't matching what they say they want to do in helping our youth?
Well, the first thing I'll say to that is I don't want you to be an ally. I want you to be a co-conspirator. An ally is somebody who would just come by and just give you some money and say, I support your cause. You know what I'm saying? Versus a co-conspirator is somebody who's willing to actually stand next to you in this fight and say, we're going to devise plans together in order to fight for racial equity and opportunity for all people of color. The second thing of that is when it comes to those faces, obviously that's why we see a lot of the expulsion rates. I mean, look at just what happened when we look at Milwaukee Public Schools, right? They were faced with a lawsuit from the Office of Civil Rights, the Federal Office of Civil Rights, because of the high level of suspensions and expulsions that were happening. And they were basically over issues that really did not require expulsions or suspension, right? So it's really when you're looking at, you have educational institutions that are a reflection of what we see society-wise, where many of our young people are already being treated like criminals before. That's why we have the whole school to prison pipeline, right? I'm already disciplining these kids as if there's a technique. I don't know if you all have ever heard of it. It's called the Reed's technique. I learned about this technique some years ago. The Reed's technique is essentially where a young person can be taken into a back room or office in at the school and could then be questioned like they're in an interrogation room at a police station by administration, teachers, administration. And this is happening oftentimes in urban school settings, unbeknownst to parents. Now, we know that usually when it comes to questioning, you're not allowed to do this without parents being present. But there are many parents who may not know that, regardless of the fact is this is a technique that is happening and you're already treating K-5 students, first grade, second grade, as if they are a part of the criminal justice system already, right? So the mere fact that you've got these systems, you've got these people who claim to be progressives, they claim they are claimed to be liberals, where there's a line to that, because I submit to you that Democrats, both the Democratic and the Republican Party, are screwed over black folks. So if you tell me you're liberal or conservative, that means nothing to me. What's your actions? So it's the matter of really being able to call out exactly, and people being straight honest and calling out, this is what I see. I don't care how you feel about it. I don't care if you believe that that I'm attacking you. Well, my people have been attacked since we've been here. Get used to it. So we have to be straight honest and saying what we see. And when we're calling out injustice, we can't sugarcoat it.
Joe, anything you want to add?
Yeah, man. I think when it comes to that word ally, there's too many self-appointed allies, and people got to understand you can't appoint yourself as an ally, right? Communities will let you know if we rock with you or we don't, right? Don't just say, hey, I am. No. We'll let you know when we rock with you. And the other thing is, we have to understand white guilt and the reasons why some people come work in the inner city schools, or white savior, right? They want to come in and save the day. There's so many movies that you have the white teacher or white principal who saves the day. That movie Blindside, she saves the black boy from his life. Now he's an NFL player, right? There's so many movies like that. So I think we have to understand that sometimes people are coming into communities of color not because of I want to help you and be an ally, but there's some self-gratification that's aligned with where they're placing themselves and positioning themselves. So we have to be mindful of that. And that's why, for me, it's not about what you say, like you said, Jamaal. It's about I'm watching what you do, your actions. And if you're the money person, I'm watching where you put your money. You know what I'm saying? If you're putting your money towards the stuff that you claim you're trying to help with, okay, I get it. But don't speak about one thing, but do something else. So allies can't self-appoint themselves, and we got to be careful and watch them, because sometimes people are just doing things to have self-gratification.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. We do have a huge issue of that white savior complex that we are seeing and have seen for years, right? And we just have to be aware and call it out. I think that's part of our responsibility, is to call that out when we're seeing it happening, to address it, so that it won't be where someone is appointing themselves as an ally. Right. But and as Jamaal said, great to be an ally, but move to a co-conspirator. I love that, right? Move to a co-conspirator with me. And again, you can't appoint yourself to be that ally. Yeah, we're going to give you the title. We're going to give you the respect if you've earned it. But just to walk in day one, oh, I'm an ally, I'm going to help you out. Backseat.
Yeah, and also to come in and say that you with this white saviors complex, but then trying to get me to assimilate to white culture, you're not saving me. You're actually stripping me of actually my authentic identity. You're causing more damage than you are being of service. So if you're really concerned about me, get to learn more about me. That's that whole cultural humility piece. And I'm not talking about cultural I hate the concept cultural competency, because all that says is I got to reach a certain quota of cultural understanding and I don't have to go any further, versus humility talks about, yes, I've learned and I'm trying to learn more. There's more I want to learn every day, because I know I don't have it all and I want to be better for the sake of the populations that I serve. But when you're coming in with this white saviors complex of saying, I want to go and help those poor old black folks in that 53206 because there's something wrong down there, then you're not really doing any beneficial work if the whole thing is to get you to get them to be where you are as a white person and get them to assimilate to the expectations of white culture.
I just really quickly, you brought up 53206, and that's I grew up on 20th and Vienna, right? 53206, and we always talk
Ninth
about
and
how,
Atkinson.
you know what I'm saying? Like I didn't really realize where I was until I left and went to college, because it's just the neighborhood, right? And so it's so interesting. And I don't mean to kind of get us off track, but it's so crazy how if I would have understood some of what I knew now, I definitely would have moved differently when I was younger. But I wouldn't take anything away from how I grew up.
Right.
Man, some great conversation, great dialogue we are engaging in. When it comes to, well, let me speak to this. So when we talk about the ally, co-conspirator idea, my plea to those who are attempting to understand and grow, because I believe there are some individuals who are not of the Black community who want to help, who want to see better and see different. My goal is for them to do something that you're talking about, Jamal, is to seek understanding and to work on a daily basis and have intentionality behind what they do. Right? Be intentional in your operation and your motives. So I have a friend who works at an organization, and someone put out this information, a memo about what was happening. The organization is based in Minneapolis, and they put out this memo, and someone decides they're going to write a statement of support, and then they use a Black gift, right? Something that has Blackness attached to it, but it's a white woman. Does that come off as sincere, or does that come off as mockery when you are doing something like that and you're calling yourself an ally? So
I think we need to start teaching people about cultural appropriation. But you really, when you're making a statement, I think that you have to be humble in accepting the fact that is a hurting people that we're seeing right now, and you have to understand the whole idea of intent versus impact. And and somebody just said intent is critical. The intent may not have been that she was trying to be offensive or she was trying to step on anybody's toes, but you got to understand that there's an impact that comes from that, regardless of what your intent is. And the impact that comes from that is the fact that what you're doing actually seems to be more insensitive than what you want it to be. So I honestly believe that's where it comes from. The whole idea of getting to know people and experiences. What's a great example of that? Remember the H&M commercial when the Black kid had on the sweatshirt, and I think it said something like, "I'm the craziest monkey in town," or something like that, right? And when that sweatshirt came out, Black folks was up in arms across the world. Like, do you not understand the racial connotation behind monkey and Black folk? And the boy's mom was like, I don't see the problem. It's like, okay, I think you're looking at it from a money standpoint, but whatever. But my whole thing is you have to also understand that all Black folks we're not monolithic people. Right. People have different perspectives when it comes to race relations and experiences. So if you truly want to learn about Black folks, get to learn all spectrums of Black folks, right? And recognize that we all have our own ways of thinking, and then also be sensitive to the fact that there's just some lines it would be safe for you not to cross. There's just some things that I just should not engage myself in by any means.
Dr. Joe, anything you want to add to that piece?
No, I like that. I mean, the number one thing for me that I got out of what Brother Jamal just said was, let's be very clear. We are not monolithic. We are not all gangsters. We are not all super churchy. We are not all Christians. We are not. we come in all shapes, sizes. We believe in all kind of stuff, and we got to understand that, and we got to respect that. And some people they see us as this is how Black people are, and the reality is no. That has been your experience with a particular Black person, right? You haven't experienced all Black people, so don't put us all in a box. And so people just got to be mindful of that.
Don't ask me when we're sitting at the table. Well, Jamal, tell me what Black people think. I don't know. I can tell you what I think. I can't tell you what every Black person thinks. I can't. I mean, I love there's some Black folk. Okay, here's a great example. Looking at this conversation, do you think, and when we're talking about the impact of race relations, do you all think that we're going to have the same perspective as Candace Owens, who always figures out every?
I was just going there too.
Yeah, so you can't say what do Black folks think, because Candace Owens is not the typical Black person, and everything in her argument is fighting the message of racism, right? And this is a Black woman, right? White folks love her because she's, oh my God, she's intelligent, she's brilliant, and she speaks everything against racism. So you can't keep saying, well, tell me what the Black people think. I don't know. I can't tell you what every Black person thinks. I can tell you what I think, and I'm going to tell you that that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And the reason Candace Owens came to my mind was when we were having this discussion. I saw a video of her talking about that you could not tell if Ahmaud Arbery was running away, or he ran towards them, so he couldn't have been running away, or we couldn't tell if he was jogging. We don't know what he was doing when that incident happened. I just looked at the screen, and that was my look.
You know what's amazing about Candace Owens? Candace Owens, her arguments are null and void to me, and speaking against racism, because the fact that she won a racial discrimination lawsuit. So how is it possible you won a $40,000 racial discrimination lawsuit, but then you're going to turn around just some years later and say that racism is not an issue? Did you give that $40,000 back then? Because obviously that was the reason why you got it, was because of racial harassment. So that's why, a lot of what Candace Owens says, I can't take her seriously. I can't engage, and it's unfortunate because I think she would probably, if she would just, really refocus herself, she could be so dynamic, because she's a brilliant woman. I just really feel like her intelligence is really misguided in a way that's really detrimental to our people. So that's why it's like, you can't just believe that we all have the same perspectives. We all think the same. We believe the same. We act the same. We cherish the same experiences, because we don't. Yeah. And there's a classic example right there.
Yeah,
absolute. So we're going to go ahead. We're reaching an hour. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up our conversation, but I want you all to leave us with, and there's so much more. We could probably go another hour and a half easy. But I'm going to give you guys a break because it's been a lot of this the last couple of days. But what I want is for you each to give maybe a minute of just what's your point you want someone to take from your presence here today. So just maybe in a minute, give it a summary, and we'll go from there. Dr. Joe, I'm going to have you go first, if you don't mind.
No, that's cool. I'll just say that as a self-identified Black man, and I always tell people that I'm book smart, street smart, and I got common sense that makes me a bad Black man. But what's more important is that I'm not selfish, and I want to see others win. And what you have to do, no matter what's going on in the world, is put yourself around people that want to win and want you to win, because there's a certain energy that you need around your life to create the life that you deserve. And so even through the racism, the sexism, the homophobia, through everything that we go through as Black people, I'm here to let you know that you can win, and you will win if you continue to focus on staying true to who you are, making sure you're staying true to your identity, and focusing on, matter of fact, running, not walking in your purpose.
That's dope. That's dope, Brother Joe. The one thing that I'll say is I want you all to know that your blackness is not a death sentence, and don't allow for it to be. I will always be one to submit to protecting your blackness, protecting yourself, protecting your family, protecting your purpose, and referring to what Dr. Joe was saying, by any means necessary. And I just want people to understand that it is important that we make sure to keep building ourselves, whether that's physically, emotionally, spiritually, continue building ourselves and increasing more and more, because of the fact that there are many forces outside of our comfort zones, outside of our current environments, or environments that we're comfortable in, that are looking for different ways in which to eradicate us, to take us out, to end all our lives, our existence, right? It should be no consequence that Black Lives Matter, right? We shouldn't have that conversation. And for everyone who wants to counter that with all lives matter, I would submit to you to say that if all lives matter, show me Black Lives Matter then. If all lives do matter, show me Black Lives Matter. So just ensure and know that that who you are is beautiful, and that there's no one that can be able to take that away from you. Do not allow that to be a death sentence. And when I also say death sentence, I don't mean just physical death and somebody killing you. I'm also meaning somebody who's attempting to kill your dreams, to kill your purpose, to kill what you're focused on doing. Because people tend to stand in front of you and try to kill that as well. So do not allow that to ever be a factor. And let's make sure that we're doing what's necessary to build not only our community, but to build a community that young people can take a hold of and they can take to a next level.
Brother Deshaun.
Yes, brother.
Because I just thought about, and it's not that I just thought about this, but I want to make sure to say this, because is 3 Black males on this call, and I had an awakening over the last couple of months, and that awakening was, if you have your partner, specifically a Black woman, you make sure that you protect her at all costs and involve her in the work that you do, and make sure that she understands that she is honored and respected, because the reality is, as Black men, if you go into history, we don't win without Black women. Yeah. And I'm going to shut my mouth and leave it there.
That's a great word to leave it on. Support our struggle in our lives. I appreciate you, gentlemen, for taking the time out to have this dialogue on a Thursday conversation. I am going to keep this up. If you are interested in knowing more information about Thursday conversations, you want us to continue to do this, you think it was worthwhile, please let me know that you do. Hit us up, hit me up, and hit up these gentlemen. They're definitely wanting to have conversations with you, but make sure you let them know what the conversation is, and just don't throw it at them, because we do need time to prepare our minds for the depth that sometimes we have to go. So with that being said, gentlemen, Dr. Joe Johnson, thank you. Jamaal E. Smith, thank you very much. And that's going to be the end of our first Thursday conversation. Thank you all so very much for being here, tuning in. Please send this message out to as many people as you can. Bring your children in on the conversation so that they can have this dialogue as well, because their voices are important and their voices are necessary for where we're going on the next level. I will put this up before I leave everybody, and we appreciate that. I'm going to bring these brothers back on the screen real quick. Black King, we want to make sure that you guys know. And then we also have this comment that just came through. Yes, sir. More convo needed. So we will be having more conversation. I will ask these gentlemen to come back and dialogue with us. Thank you all so much. I'll be in touch with you, brothers. I'll be in your inboxes with a great big thank you. You all have a good night. Get some rest, because y'all been doing this all day. So,
all right, man.
Again, thank you. And I'm ending the broadcast.
Peace.